we're going to do right now. So we're going to take this information, this data here, which is on a study between um, the age of women and the birth rate that corresponds to the age. Now, I don't know, like where, the study has taken place or anything like that, but the author does cite his source down there. So if we look at the values in the table, maybe starting with, the age A of 16, there's a birth rate of 14.1. So when they did this study, they took a look at, all the 16-year-olds, whatever region they were studying this at, and they found that, there were on average 14.1 births, for every, 1,000 people. And then the rest just kind of follow suit there. And you'll notice as the age increases, the birth rate increases. And we actually have kind of like a peak birth rate in this table of 106.5, corresponding to the age bracket of 27-year-olds. And then it decreases. Okay, so it goes from 106.5, drops down to 97.3, and then it drops down pretty significantly as you increase in age here. And there's a lot of reasons as to why that might be, but I'm going to kind of leave the speculation out and just illustrate how we can create this table in our graphing calculator and then look at something called a scatter diagram, which is basically a plot of these points. And we can also use the graphing calculator to help us construct a quadratic function that would best model this data. In part A, they want us to draw a scatter diagram of the data where they want age to serve as the independent variable, which means that the birth rate is going to be the dependent variable. One thing to always keep in mind is that the independent variable is going to go into what's called a list, and there are going to be two lists that we work with. This is going to go into the L1 list. So all of these values in this age column will be entered into our calculator into the L1 part of a table. And the dependent variable B, all these values will get entered into an L2 column of our table. And let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go back to the home screen. And let's press the Stat button. In the first column, the Edit column, option 1 says Edit. Go ahead and press Enter. It brings you to a menu where we have 3 columns, L1, L2, and L3. The most important ones, of course, are L1 and L2. Does everybody have an L1 and L2 column in their calculator? Okay. No? All right, so Kevin, let's hit. Okay, so Kevin, let's press Stat. And we'll go to option 5. Press Enter. And then press Enter one more time. Go back to Stat, option 1. You got it. So we're going to type in all of the age values from our table in L1. So 16, 19, and be sure to press Enter each time, especially when you get to the last value in that column. Sometimes your calculator forgets to save it. So you can bypass that by pressing Enter. To get to the L2 column, simply press your right arrow button, and we'll type in all of the different birth rates B. Oops. Oh. There we go. Okay. Let's go to the y equals menu, and we'll get rid of all these equations from our last problem. Now, I'd like you folks to go up to where it says plot 1 and press enter, and come back down to y1. This should be highlighted in black, and when it's highlighted in black, it tells the graphing calculator that you're going to have it plot a table of values. So whenever working with data, you need this to be highlighted in black for your scatter diagram. And the best scatter diagram viewing window is going to be found by pressing zoom and choosing option 9. Okay, so you press zoom and scroll down to where you get to where it says zoom stat. Okay, go ahead and press enter. And that would be our scatter diagram. You guys getting a similar looking graph? Anybody need me to repeat any of that? Okay, yep. Do you have the data entered into the L1, L2 column? Okay, so you go to y equals, and you scroll up to where it says plot 1, and you want to press enter, and jump back down to y1 and make sure that it's plot 1 is highlighted in black. Is yours highlighted? Okay, now press zoom and select option 9. Oh, it's awesome. No problem. Now for the answer to part A, where it says draw, or when it says draw a scatter diagram of the data, just a rough sketch of the points that you're seeing is good enough for me. So just try to recreate those little boxes which represent the data as best as you can. It doesn't have to be 1000% accurate here. And keep in mind that the independent variable is the age A. So I'm going to label the x-axis as the A-axis, and then the y-axis is going to be representing the different birth rates. And as you can see, the birth rates go up until they kind of peak, and then they begin to go down as the age continues to increase. So where it says what type of relation appears to exist between age and birth rate, well, it's definitely not linear, which leaves only one option left for the type of relation, and that would be a quadratic relation. This definitely looks like, the shape of a parabola, more or less. So quadratic relation. And the last thing that we'll do today is part B. I want to show you how to get the quadratic function that can be used to approximate these data values. And then I'll include the solution to part C on Blackboard. So what you're going to do to get the quadratic function is you'll press stat again. You'll arrow over to the calc column, and then you'll select option 5. Now for section 4.2, where it wants a linear model, you select option 4. Okay, and it's nice enough to give you the format of the linear function, but we want a quadratic function, so we're going to select option 5 where it says quad reg, which reg is short for regression. Go ahead and press enter, and if you have a TI-84, you'll see a menu similar to this, but if you have a TI-83, you're probably back at the home screen. So hang tight, all my TI-83 folk. If you have a TI-84, make sure that this says L1 and this says L2, and then the next two rows are blank. Once that's all taken care of, scroll down to calculate. And for those of you that have a TI-83, we've caught up to you. Let's everybody, whether you have an 83 or 84, press enter. And we should be seeing something like this. In the top row, it tells you the format of the quadratic function that they're assuming you'll write it in. And then it gives you the values of a, b, and c for that quadratic function. Now sometimes you might see a row for r squared, and if you're seeing a row for r squared, don't freak out about it. Yep, so r squared is a value that's going to be between 0 and 1, and the closer that r squared is to 1, the better the model is for the data. The graphing calculator does produce the best model possible for the data, and the value of r squared, as well as the value of r, if you watch the 4.2 videos, they basically give you a level of confidence in using these functions to approximate the data values. So generally speaking, the closer to 1 that we are with r squared, the better. And with regard to linear regressions, the closer you are to 1 or negative 1, the better the function. Okay, so 0.963. Yep, so I'll be including some videos as to how you can find the r and r squared values. I'll put them into the folders. But for now, what I'd like to do is just write our quadratic function using these values of a, b, and c. And if there are no rounding instructions provided, then you'll want to round to 4 decimal places. Okay, so with that said, our value of a is approximately negative 0.5471. Our value of b, approximately 31.1900. And then c is roughly negative 342.2177. And are you guys getting the same values for a, b, and c? Okay. So this will basically get folded into our quadratic function, which you have a couple of ways of writing that. You can write it as f of x if you want, or you can write it as b of a. Okay, b of a is just the usage of a and b, the variables that they're using in this table. So just put these values into your function. Okay, that would be one version of it. And of course, you could use a instead of x to get a function that uses variables more specific to the problem. Woo! All right, so like I said, I'll include the solution to part C on Blackboard, but do you guys have any questions for me regarding any of this material?